Hello there, and welcome to What's the Point? A question we should all be asking ourselves, and the podcast by brand architect Bill Ellis that will help you discover, clarify, and live your purpose.
Hi, welcome back, everybody. It's Bill Ellis, your host for What's the Point? And I have a guest today that I've known for years, and I'm just so excited that she has been able to fit me into her schedule. And you, the listeners, are going to love this woman. Her name is Lois Creamer. Hello, Lois. Thank you again for joining me.
Honored to be with you, Bill.
And for those of you that don't know Lois, you will end this episode by knowing her and loving her. Lois is an authority on speaking and professional speaking and how to monetize that. She has a fabulous book that's been out for several years, which we'll talk about, called Book More Business, Make More Money Speaking. And then she followed that up a couple of years later with a book called The Speaker Author, Sell More Books and Book More Speeches. And we'll talk about how speaking and writing and having a book work hand in hand. So Lois, just very quickly, you have a background in the corporate world. I think it was U.S. Steel Corporation that you worked for. How long? Let me move real quickly ahead and get to the part that everyone wants to hear about. Share with us. Tell me, how did you get into speaking?
I got into speaking totally by accident. I had a corporate sales and marketing job right out of college. It was a great job. Loved it. Great experience. And then my husband and I adopted a baby. And so I left corporate life and stayed home for a number of years, which was really what I really wanted to do, be a mom at that time. That was much more important. Stayed home a number of years and had been flirting with the idea, or as I would tell my husband, threatening with the idea to maybe look for work again. And I got a call from a professional speaker here in town named Shep Hyken. And Shep is past national president of National Speakers Association, very talented guy. And a college friend of mine told him to call me that maybe I was ready to go back to work. And literally, Bill, he called me and I said, well, I'm not really. He was looking for somebody full-time. I said, I'm not looking for full-time work. But I said, how interesting. I never even knew speaking was an industry. But you sound like a great guy and I wish you good luck. Hung up the phone. 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. It was Shep. And he said, would you have lunch with me? And I said, well, I thought to myself, Bill, the experience of interviewing would be good. I'd been home for a number of years. So I said yes, but I really wasn't sure that I wanted to. But we went out to lunch and he said, what would you be looking for if you were looking for work? And I said something between 9 and 3 while my daughter's in school with lots of flexibility. That's what I'd be looking for. And he said, would you be willing to give it a try working with me? I'll give you the flexibility. I'll do the time you want. And I said, okay. I can't tell you how surprised I was that came out of my mouth, Bill. And my husband, when he came home from work that night, I said, you're not going to believe this, but I'm starting a part-time job Monday. He was totally shocked. It turned out to be a terrific thing. I worked with Shep, incredibly talented guy, worked several years with him, and National Speakers Association started asking me to speak at conventions, their conventions and national meetings, on how to sell speeches. And I started thinking, I wonder if there could be a job in this for me. So I started out on my own over 20 years ago, and it turned out it was a good decision that I made. But everything kind of was kismet, if you will. I had not planned on having my own business. I'd never even heard of the speaking industry, but yet here I am.
Yeah. So a great story. And just for those of you listening that don't know, the gentleman that Lois is talking about is Shep, S-H-E-P, Hyken, H-Y-K-E-N. And he is a true gentleman, but also a very, very talented person who kind of got his start from the world of magic, which is an interesting story in and of itself. But let me ask you, Lois, when someone said that you might be looking for work and connected Shep with you, What was the position that you were looking for? Because it wasn't come and be a speaker with me. What
I
were you doing for him?
well, I was really running his business. He wanted me to do everything except give the speech.
Okay.
And so I went in. I'd say I learned this business at the feet of the master. Shep is an incredibly smart businessman. And, speaking is a business.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to treat it like a business. And I learned how he treated it like a business, helped him get speaking opportunities, learned how to market and sell professional speakers. And I really enjoyed working with him. He's an incredibly talented guy, has been in my corner ever since I started my business. So it was just such good fortune that our lives crossed when they did. I wasn't really looking for a job. He wasn't sure what he was looking for. But eventually I ended up, he said, your job is to do everything except give the speech. And I like the mix of things, quite frankly.
That's a pretty complete job description.
It was. It was.
All you have to do is ask yourself, is this giving the speech? No, then it's my job.
That's right. That's
And
right.
everything from yeah, that's fabulous. So what a great way to learn from the ground up.
Yes.
How much of it ended up being Lois self-taught versus, I mean, I know what I know of Shep is that he would be a good mentor, but I also suspect that he hired someone so that he wouldn't have to be hands-on and guide you through the whole thing. How was it learning on the job on your own?
Totally learned from Shep. And Shep also had me attend National Speaker Association meetings here in St. Louis, where I'm based. We have a chapter here, and I attended whenever they did anything on marketing, selling, any part of the business. And that's really how I learned. And I attended, he always sent me to national meetings for National Speakers Association. And so I learned from people about the business of speaking.
Okay. And as you learned that and you started to really know the business, is that when you saw the opportunity that there's a niche there that you could do speaking
I did.
on how to make a speaking business?
I did, and really, Bill, I started my business based upon my sense that most speakers that I met really sucked when they answered the question, "What do you do?" And I started thinking there's got to be a better way of doing this. And most speakers, when asked that question, answer, "I speak on sales, I speak on leadership, I speak on." And to me, that wasn't a great way to set up a relationship. So I
Mhm.
created what I call a positioning statement. It's still the biggest part of my business. It's the first thing that I do when I work with clients, and that's a concept and outcome statement of working with you that allows people to see the totality of ways, if you will, that you could help them.
Okay, and that I'm sure is I know is addressed in your book, Book More Business, Make Money Speaking.
It
But
is.
what can you share with us here to help us, myself and our listeners, better understand that?
Well, I could tell you, if you asked me what I did, Bill, I could say I'm a consultant in the speaking industry, which is true. But when I say that, I am giving you one way that I drive my intellectual property to the market
Mm.
and one
Okay.
area of expertise. And speakers now really can't make a living just speaking, getting on a plane, going and speaking, coming back, rinse and repeat. We can't do that. So there are a number of ways that I tell speakers they need to monetize that expertise that they speak about on the platform. And I think the first step is getting someone to listen to you, garnering interest in what you do. And that's what a great
Mm.
positioning statement does. So when somebody asks me what I do, I say I work with speakers, consultants, and experts who want to book more business, make more money, and monetize their message. And I used to speak on sales, corporate sales teams as well. I don't do that anymore. But my positioning statement for that was I work with organizations that want to fast forward their selling skills so they can be more successful at what they do. And that really created more of a conversation than just answering I speak on sales. It
And
allowed me
both
to
of
share the
those,
totality of ways, in other words, that I could
yeah,
work with
I was
someone.
just going to say both of those positioning statements are literally brilliant.
Thank you.
They help very much myself and others understand why you've become so incredibly successful in what you do. Um, when you say that you work with speakers, consultants, and subject matter experts, that sounds very specific, yet it's very broad in its reach, isn't it?
It is kind of both. I have a very niche business.
Right.
All I do now, I don't speak to sales teams anymore. The only speaking I do now are to groups of professional speakers in this country and around the world. And really, the only work I do are with speakers who do consulting and who are subject matter experts. So it's really, I always say, Bill, if you look up the word niche in Webster's dictionary, my face
Mhm.
is looking at you. And um, I'm a big believer in target marketing. The only reason I believe in it is because it works, and so I practice it myself.
Yeah, and I meant that as very much a compliment when I said it comes across as very limited, yet it's very broad and far
Yes,
reaching because a lot of that is open to interpretation of the person hearing you say that.
true.
And plus, a lot of people saying subject matter expert opens the door to a lot of people that would have an interest in what you could do for them because a lot of us consider ourselves subject matter experts, as opposed to not everyone thinks of themselves as a speaker
True.
or necessarily a consultant. So I think that's another. I don't know how if that was trial and error. I don't know if that was just blind luck, or I don't know if that was just your intelligent, focused approach to things. But I think it's incredible the those three words.
Well, thanks. I really added that onto a positioning statement because I ended up having working with some clients who were expert witnesses who wanted to market their services.
Hmm.
I had some clients who were doctors who wanted to leverage that into speaking, their expertise into speaking in the speaking industry and consulting, and some of them becoming expert witnesses as well.
See, that's really caught my interest. Expert witness. I love that whole genre, and true crime and
Yep,
following. My expert witness will testify versus your expert
that's
witness who's
right.
giving the other side, and it's always fascinating. So that opens up an interesting area for me. Is there advice that you give, specific or in general, that helps that expert witness have more credence or more believability through how they speak versus the expert witness on the other side of the case?
Well, look, I tell speakers, consultants, and subject matter experts like expert witnesses that you need to be able to communicate really well. Just this, it's the same advice I'd give to a speaker, Bill. You need to hone your craft because if you are testifying, you're in the communication business.
Hmm.
And if you want to be hired and paid to be an expert witness, for example, you need to be able to communicate in a compelling, natural, relational, and influential way. And I don't teach you how to do that. That's not my area of expertise, but there are a lot of people who do teach that. So there really is a lot of connectivity between those things that I do that can be somewhat surprising to many. But it's not really a big reach.
Okay. And the importance of communication, you just touched on it. Communication is at the heart of virtually every position and every interaction that we have in life. And regular listeners know that I love this quote from George Bernard Shaw that says, "The problem with communication is the illusion that it took place." So yeah, making sure that when you're working with people, you coach them to communicate well is not just understanding their subject matter, but understanding how to deliver it in a way that the audience relates. Uh, is there a trick to doing that, or is there guidance that you give people to how to understand doing that?
Well, I don't really speak or work with people on presentation skills, those kind of communication skills beyond sales and marketing. But, one of
Okay.
the things I tell people, and I tell everybody this, Bill, I'm a big believer in Toastmasters. Toastmasters
Mhm.
is an incredible organization. In fact, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and I said, I wish every middle school and high school would have a Toastmaster club because I
What a
think
great
for kids
idea.
to be able to learn to be powerful communicators at a young age and to be comfortable doing it would be such a benefit to them for the rest of their lives. But I tell people who, for example, who want to jump into speaking, go to Toastmasters, or you can spend a whole lot of money and work with a presentation skills expert
Mhm.
one on one. But I think Toastmasters is a great organization. You get to practice stories, you get to listen to other people, you get I think what I call well considered feedback from people
Mhm.
who are used to hearing speakers.
Mhm.
I think it's a great way to get started. And Bill, lots of our colleagues who have been speaking for years are still members of Toastmaster groups
Yeah.
and go there to practice new material, get feedback on it. It's something that I always recommend.
And I love that recommendation. For those listeners that aren't familiar with Toastmasters, it's an organization that a lot of people think it's where you go specifically to learn how to speak or give speeches. And that's at the heart of it. But when it was first founded, it was founded from the premise of helping young men to, at the time, it's dated, but helping young men to not just learn how to communicate better, but how to build self-confidence and how to be able to better present themselves and therefore navigate the world that was ahead of them. So your thought, Lois, of adding Toastmasters as a school curriculum, I think is brilliant because we all need to communicate. And my experience with Toastmasters has been exactly what you said, where I have learned a tremendous amount. I have, if nothing else, I've learned that I need to stop the uhs and the ahs and the hesitations, but not just that it's not a good thing, but here are some guides and here are some consideration, here's some training to help you do that. Are you still a member of Toastmasters, or you may not have time at this
I'm
point?
not, I'm not, but I'll tell you the interesting thing about Toastmasters to me, Bill, is the makeup of the group. And I always tell people if you're interested in Toastmasters, visit some of the clubs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in St. Louis. How many are there? Probably 30 groups here in
Mm-hmm.
just the St. Louis area. Visit until you find a group you're comfortable with. You can be surrounded by people who speak professionally, people who speak publicly. I think those are two separate
Mm-hmm.
things, as well as a lot of men and women who are company executives who just want to be able to put their best foot forward when they're communicating. So it really can appeal to just about anybody who is looking to up their game communication wise.
And again, that's so essential to effectively communicate and to be able to bring our views forward, whether as a professional speaker or whether as someone in a neighborhood organization or
That's right.
frankly someone within a family
That's
or friends.
that's right. I think so.
There is
It's just,
good.
it's this is life training, I think Toastmasters is. It just teaches you to be able to communicate what you are thinking about, how you're saying it, and how you can best say it to be received in the way you meant it.
Yeah, I was going to say there's an organization that's not Toastmasters, but there's an organization, I'll call it a fellowship that I'm a part of, and we all have the opportunity to share our experience, strength, and hope in there. And there are some people, and one in particular, this young lady has great story, great experience, but just horrible communication skills, where between every thought or half thought, there's an and it takes away from being able to understand the meaning that she has. Now, she's not doing it professionally, and which is a good thing, but she could very much. She's an example of how people could benefit from going to Toastmasters. Do you have thoughts? And I know you said, Lois, that you work more on the sales and marketing aspect as opposed to the actual content of speaking or the skills of speaking. But what are your thoughts? What's your experience on speaking versus talking, if you know what I mean?
I do. I think that there shouldn't be as much of a difference as many people think there may be. I speak very conversationally when I do a presentation. I write very conversationally. And I think it's the way to go. I think that you want to be relatable. That's the whole thing, the gift of communication, quite frankly, is being relatable. And whether you're I say a professional speaker or a public speakers, I think of, Bill, as politicians, or it can be an executive in a company, the head of the PTA in school. You just want to be able to communicate your thoughts in a practical, compelling, and sometimes influential way. The difference between a public speaker and a professional speaker: public speakers and people who give talks, teachers, are there just to give the facts. Professional speakers are hired to not only give the facts, but to weave stories that really exemplify what they're talking about. The use of story in professional speaking, I think, is what makes the content palatable and memorable. And that's the big difference to me between professional speaking and public speaking. I heard someone who recently passed away, a member of National Speakers Association, who was in a leadership position when I first joined. Her name was Glenna Salisbury, a wonderful speaker out of Arizona. And she opened up a National Speakers Association conference. And she said, I was trying to decide what to talk to you about. And I thought I would talk to you about how I create a speech. And she literally gave a formula. And I called her right afterwards when we got home. And I said, I want to write a blog post on your formula. Is that okay with you? And she said, absolutely. And I said, then I called her again and said, I'm going to write a chapter in my book about it. And it's based upon this simple thought, Bill. PDA, the acronym PDA, which stands for P, point. What point are you trying to make?
Okay.
It's PSA. Point, story. Tell me a story that illustrates the point that I just made. And then A is application. Now apply it to the people sitting in front of you right now. Point, story, application. And this is the way she approached her speeches. And I just thought it was genius. I also think it's a good way to approach writing. It is a way to make sure that you're heard clearly, you're understood, and you understand why is this content being shared with me?
Well, I love that it's quantified as PSA because it makes so much sense. And what it makes me think of is just a few weeks ago, I was in Dubai with my wife, and we were able to go to a 2-day workshop where this gentleman has been, I'll say, speaking, not as a professional speaker, but as a spiritual guide, if you will. And at one point, my wife leaned, and I've known him for 30 plus years, but have never been in this direct an environment with him. And my wife leaned over and said, "Isn't it amazing how," and I'm going to use your words, even though she didn't, how he's got a point to make and he has a story for all of it. And then you see how it applies. So using your words, I can fill in the blanks with what my wife said. And it's absolutely true. The man had, he would make a point, and then almost like a thought popped into his head, he'd go into a compelling story, and you would think, where the heck is this going? Because it's nowhere near the topic that he's talking about. But he brought it around beautifully, and he did that time and again for 4.5 hours on Saturday, and then again for 4.5 hours on Sunday, and never told the same story. It was brilliant. It was absolutely engaging.
No, it's a way to make your information palatable to the people who are listening. It's not just enough to talk to people about something. It's why am I telling you this? Why is it important? How is it going to be meaningful to me? And how can I actually apply these things that you're talking about? To me, that's the magic of this. And I think Glenna put it in such an easy way to understand what a great approach and a winning approach is. I just absolutely love it. By the way, I'm writing the second edition to Make Money Speaking right now. And believe me, that chapter's going to still be in there.
Okay. And speaking of that, as things advance and progress, a lot you talked about you can't make a living anymore simply flying out and speaking, and part of that is because the money's not there the way it used to be. I believe you can expand on that, please. But also, uh, how different is it now having so much of professional speaking being asked to be done like we are now, virtually
Yeah.
through whatever platform?
Well, I'll tell you, I think the money is out there. I think there's never been a better time than to be in the
Okay.
speaking business than right now. We have gotten a significant bounce coming out of COVID. Companies are having to learn how to lead in new ways, leading a more dynamic workforce. Some are in person, some are still
Mhm.
virtual employees. So they have to find new ways of leading. They're recreating some culture from the ground up because of that. How do you engage? How do you engage people virtually? How do you keep salespeople on task in a virtual workforce? There are uh, all kinds of new doors, quite frankly, that COVID has opened up, and not the least of which what we're doing right now, virtual. I have when everything shut down. Um, I'll tell you, I have spoken all over the world from where I am sitting right now during COVID on
Okay.
almost every continent. Speaker Association has invited me in, and I didn't have jet lag when I when I appeared either, Bill. No lost luggage either. I said my only layover was in my kitchen. I didn't mind that at all. I think one of the biggest challenges right now, Bill, is travel. I had week before last, I had a speech in Salt Lake, and then I was going on to Lake Tahoe to visit my daughter and her husband.
Mhm.
And I had the flights from hell. Never in 25 years have I experienced such. And I'm hearing this from a lot of our colleagues. I was talking to a professional speaker. He's been doing it for over 30 years now. He's a 3 million mile member of United. I mean, you
Hmm.
can't get any higher. And he said, I've had some complaints and I've emailed and I've gotten responses from bots. No one wants to talk to me. I'm a 3 million mile.
Yeah.
And so I think traveling is more of a challenge. It takes more time. Instead of now just going in a day before you're going to give the speech, some speakers are going in 2 days before to account for canceled flights, things that are
Hmm.
happening late, just to make sure. And the interesting thing is the people who plan these meetings aren't complaining about it at all. The extra hotel night. It's well worth it for them to feel secure that
Right.
the person who's giving the presentation is going to be there. But I think that virtual has opened up a whole other world for professional speakers. Um, it's become a great add-on. That the last chapter in my book I call Aftercare, Bill, and it's really what do you do after you give a speech. And I'd like to say that I strategically and wisely developed this thing. I totally out of the blue. I gave a speech to a corporate sales group in LA. And right after the speech, four of their sales managers came up all together to talk to me after the event. And I thought, how interesting that all four of them came up together to talk to me.
Mhm.
And so I always do a post call after a program, and I called the gentleman who brought me in, kind of a follow up thank you call.
Mhm.
And I said, I thought it was interesting that four of your sales managers wanted to talk to me after the event. And then I just found myself saying this, Bill. Do you think it would make sense for me to work with your sales managers
Hmm.
to actually apply the ideas, tactics, and techniques I talked about on the platform because we could make that happen?
Hmm.
And he said, what would that look like? Which was just the worst thing he could say, Bill, because I had no idea. I had no idea what it was. So I said, well, I'll have an email for you with some choices. So I quickly worked up, actually, I ran to my bookcase and got Alan Weiss's book on consulting and quickly put together a proposal with three options. And 10 minutes after I emailed it to this gentleman, I got an email back saying, I'll take plan B. And that began what I called aftercare. Every time I worked for a private business or a corporation, part of my follow-up was saying, would you like to take a next step with me on implementing these things? And then I would give them various options, various packages, if you will, 3 packages I'd offer. Um, and the great thing is I could fly out and give a speech. Everything else I could do just as we're doing right now, virtually. They didn't have to pay expenses. I didn't have to get on a plane. It was wonderful. So for follow-up work, just even presentations, corporations are still using virtual presentations. They were on board during COVID, realizing their people still needed to be challenged, and so they
Mm-hmm.
embraced virtual presentations. Now there's been kind of a there's companies have been anxious to get together in person because people are anxious to get together in person after
Mm-hmm.
COVID. But I do think that virtual presenting is going to be a big part of the speaking industry going forward. And it's just another tool in the toolkit for professional speakers.
Do you see in your experience with this, Lois, that there is a different approach to marketing and selling if you're focusing on virtual versus in person, or do you even make that differentiation when you approach a prospective speaking engagement?
That's a great question, Bill. And I think that one of the challenges for professional speakers nowadays is to be great either way you're speaking, whether you're speaking virtually or you're speaking in person. And I think it can take experience, it can take practice, it can take learning new techniques, but certainly the client will tell you how they want to use you. Typically, right now there's a big push for in-person meetings. People are just anxious to get together, but virtual is not going anywhere. What I do see is that a lot of the hybrid meetings where you have an audience in front of you and yet they're also allowing virtual people a virtual audience. I think
Right.
that is going away. Not totally away, but it's lessening because it is incredibly expensive to hold hybrid events. It's incredibly
Hmm.
expensive to have an AV team, and it's a big challenge. I've done it, and it's a big challenge to keep people who are sitting in front of their computers engaged while people who are sitting right in front of you in an audience engaged. I think it's a challenge. So I think virtual is here to stay. I think less so in the national association market.
Okay. That does really make me think about the different approaches of presenting live, presenting virtually, and then presenting hybrid, because there is a very different
Yes,
dynamic and a different vibe about that. And it to me, I see you make such sense the way you just described it, that trying to relate to a live audience at the same time relating to a virtual audience, it's a different approach, and finding that as I mean, it's fine if the audience can see and hear and the virtual audience can see and hear, but you're still trying to present in a way that relates to both.
exactly.
That's a challenge.
Yeah, I think it really is. And I think, quite frankly, so much of it depends on what kind of AV you have, what kind of setup the client has in order to keep those people on the computer engaged. And I also think that there's a big dynamic many of us discovered early on, quite frankly, doing virtual presentations, that people can't sit for 2 hours for a program or
Right.
90 minutes for a program in front of a computer. You've got to give them a 5 minute break, get them up, get some blood back in their legs.
Mhm.
You have to break things up a little bit more virtually, and breaking up by giving a literal break as well as breaking up activity, adding a visual, asking for feedback, making sure that a chat is being monitored so you can answer questions in real time. These are all ways to drive engagement virtually. And I think that the people who do it well will find that this can be a great income stream for them going forward.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you said someone to monitor the chat because as a participant in virtual, a viewer in virtual presentations, I find that the ongoing live chat is so amazingly, incredibly distracting from the speaker in the
No, it
presentation
can be.
because my eyes are trying to read what's all being said. And typically, I've not been able to just turn it off and get it out of my line of sight. So to me, that's almost like being in an audience, but then having some screen on the side flashing things that, you're, anyway, it presents some challenges that need some, I think, some well thought out tactics on
Well,
how to
I'll tell you,
accomplish
I
it.
have never done a virtual presentation where I didn't have somebody who was in charge of producing the event. I have done a couple of events. I have hired a producer. I have a woman who's produced for me. So I don't have to worry about any of the tech. I don't have to worry about missing a question. She would let me know if there was a question. She would pluck something out that I needed to hear about, feedback or a question. I think it's just a matter of not trying to do everything yourself. Even
Hmm.
though I'm sitting here in front of my computer and I have the ability to do everything myself, having the ability to do it is not always the best course to take.
Oh, and I agree with you 100%. And just to clarify, I was talking about myself as an audience member
Yes,
on a virtual talk where that ongoing chat box has been very
distracting.
distracting.
Yeah.
I love the fact that it presents the speaker or speakers the opportunity to get real-time feedback and real-time questions. But as another viewer, I find it very distracting.
Well, it
Anyway,
can be.
so
I think it's distracting, though. I just did an event this morning, a 90-minute online speaking thing. There were four of us presenting, and there were a little under 200 people attending virtually. And that chat was going 20 miles an hour through the whole thing. There wasn't a chance, really, that any of us could have picked up on
mhm.
feedback or someone who disagreed or agreed with us. It was distracting as a presenter. And I can't, this morning, just thinking about this morning, how fast it was moving, I can't imagine as a participant.
Well, the other thing that's cautionary about it, I feel, in particular as a presenter, if you are attempting, which I don't believe you should, to keep up with the chat as it comes in, as with all social media, it's so easy to make comments now, and there's so many people in the audience that are going to give their opinion because they know more than you, wink, wink, uh, and they just have to put it out there. And it's kind of like if we could get rid of that, it might stop that chat. It might cut that down by about a third to a third of the speed. Another benefit that you have from that not every professional has is you have a long time, full time intern, Buddy the intern.
I do, Bill. Thank you for
And it
recognizing
happens
that.
and it happens to be Buddy's birthday today. Share with the audience a little bit about it. Introduce Buddy at least verbally, if not having Buddy come on camera.
He's not in the room. Buddy is my 8-year-old yellow lab. And he is my chief joyfulness officer. He's the chief of everything, quite frankly. And Bill, I put something on my Facebook page about Buddy's birthday. Whenever I put anything on Facebook about Buddy, it gets hundreds of comments, hundreds of likes. And I said, I'll put a blog post up there and it'll get 20 likes and a couple of comments. And somebody said, Buddy ought to have it. He's an influencer. He ought to have his own social media account. I said, no one will come to mine if I give Buddy his own. I'm not going to give him his own. But he usually is at my feet. And before Buddy, I had a lab named Willie, and Willie was my intern. And I can tell you, every year they're they are the employee of the year. Buddy, 8 years running, he's an employee of the year. So I'm very proud of him.
As well, you should be. And what kind of a birthday celebration did Buddy enjoy this morning?
Well, Buddy has a lot of friends in the neighborhood, Bill. He's a social guy, and neighbors pretty much love when they see him walking down the street. and he's got lots of dog friends. In fact, I said if several of my neighbors and I could open our yard gates, we would have a dog park, one big dog park. And so Buddy shared a frosty paws with some of his neighbors to celebrate his birthday. But I'll tell you, one of the things that Buddy always reminds me is be in the moment. In all seriousness, be in the moment. You know, they don't look at yesterday as a failure and worry about tomorrow. They're in the moment. It also reminds me every day, it's time to take me out. It's time to take me out for a walk, to get away from what you're doing,
Yeah.
clear your mind. So he serves a lot of great purposes. Somebody said in my chat today, he's been an intern for 8 years. I think he deserves a promotion. And I said, he actually wants less responsibility and more speaking time at this point. And I think we're getting to be alike, me and Buddy.
Yeah, well, another thing from the reality of the impact of Buddy the intern, not just stay in the moment, but Buddy and all of his friends tend to always look at everything in a positive frame.
It's true, Bill.
It just occurred to me that's what
They,
a
you know,
great
they're, they
reminder.
don't they don't bring a lot of biases into a new relationship. It really is incredible, and I always say he's a reminder to be in the moment, not be worrying about what has happened in the past or trying to control things that I have no control over. That he's a good reminder.
It's like a living, breathing serenity prayer.
That's right. Who sheds a
Well,
lot, Bill?
oh well, yeah, we all have our faults.
We've got that. That's right. That's right.
Hey, I want to be very respectful of your time, and I know you've got a hard stop in just a few moments. What I do want to do, though, is ask you, Lois, to expand a little bit on your book, The Speaker Author, and how writing and speaking now integrate and together multiply the business versus either one separately.
Yeah, I think every expert, whether you're a speaker or consultant, every expert needs to be writing. And I started blogging I was writing articles. Then people wanted to call it a blog, Bill. So I just changed what I called it. And I got clients because of my blogging. And it's because it allows you to go into more detail, a depth to your area of expertise that people might not experience if they aren't hearing you speaking. And if they like the depth of expertise, if they like the way you write, you talk, there's a chance they may hire you. So I started writing this blog, and then that was really the beginnings of Make Money Speaking, and then certainly sell more books and book more speeches. Books are a great way to let people dip into your expertise and really get a great idea of your depth. I tell people who are talking to me about working with me, I always say, look, for $20 you can buy my book, read my book, and you will be so far ahead of the game when we start a consulting relationship. But I think combining books, can be a great area of profit. Bill, when I wrote Make Money Speaking, my first book, it's so niche, Bill, because it's for speakers and consultants. And I remember saying, this book is going to be so popular, it's going to sell in the tens. 10 people may buy this book, and that includes my family. I just didn't think it would have. And that book is now 5 years old, and I have never missed a royalty check. It has amazed me, that little book that I thought was not going to be as popular as it is. And as I said, I'm working on a second edition right now because the word Zoom doesn't appear in my book, Bill. I think I need to get writing.
Well,
But I tell my clients, look, every time you sell a speech, package books in with the speech or sell them as an adjunct to your speech. And my clients, when somebody is thinking about hiring them, will use my phrase that pays. Do you think it would make sense? And they say this, Bill, do you think it would make sense for everybody in the audience to be able to walk away with a companion book to my program. That's a hard thing to say no to.
Yeah.
So I like speakers pre-selling books, making sure that everyone walks away with one instead of selling them in the back of the room one at a time. That can be a fallback, but I schlepped books around on the road before. It isn't that much fun. Pre-selling, either making it part of the package or selling them afterwards to everybody, I think makes a lot of sense. And it just allows your audience to be able to see what you have to say in a greater depth than you will have time for in just a speech.
Let me know your thoughts on this, please, because my belief is that having that tool, having that opportunity to add that, and I loved what you said, a companion book to your talk, not only is it gives the opportunity when you're still on the proposal side to make more money,
Yes,
because people are more prone to see value in a talk and a hard something tangible
I think so.
than just a talk. So if you feel that you want to make, and I'm going to throw a number out that's probably well below your rate, but if you want to make $10,000 for a talk, people might say that's a lot to hear you talk. But if you say, hey, how about if $10,000 or $11,000 and everyone gets a book? Now they're going to say,
That's
aha.
right.
Do you find that to be real?
You know, everything in the speaking industry right now is a negotiation. Everything's a negotiation. And being able to have some things you can throw in instead of taking things out or lowering your fee, I think is a plus. So being able to say, just like you did, what if everyone was able to walk away with a copy of my book that goes into greater depth than I'm going to have time to share with them today? Or what if I met with your leadership team next week and answer any questions that they might have coming as a result of my speech? And things like this that we can throw in for added value instead of accepting less money, I think that's what my clients do. I want you to always seek to add more before you accept less.
Add more before you accept less. What a powerful statement. And I know we've got 3 minutes left. So the standard question that I ask everyone, in the context of everything, when the listeners have hit end on this, what do you want them to take away? What's the point that you want made?
I think that speaking is a very dynamic talent to have. And regardless of where you are in business or in life, becoming a great communicator is always a positive. I think encouraging our children to be readers and be communicators. Lots of times sitting in front of these game machines and phones can take away from that communication early on. And I think it's something that we need to really hone and encourage in kids. And I tell adults that you cannot go wrong by becoming a more effective communicator. And for anybody who's a speaker, consultant, or expert, anytime you're looking for an opportunity, just risk a yes. Ask for what you want and risk somebody giving you a yes.
Lois, you are an absolute wealth of information, knowledge, and talent. And one of the things I truly admire about you is not just the all of that you have as far as the gifts, but how open you are to always sharing that and giving that away. And obviously you don't give it away all the time, but you are so open to sharing your insights with like my listeners and me today. I love what you do. I appreciate your time. I can tell you personally that your book More Business is a powerful, easy to read, effective to put into action book that I hope everyone reads. And you can go to bookmorebusiness.com. Is that your site?
That's it.
And all of the information, of course, is in the show notes. Lois Creamer, thank you so very much for your time and your wisdom and your humor, and happy birthday to Buddy.
Bill, it's been a real pleasure being with you. I've been looking forward to this, so thanks for inviting me.
Thanks so much for tuning in. And if you like what you heard, please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We can promise you'll gain value in every one. Rating and reviewing makes us more discoverable and helps others find out what's the point. And if you'd like to know more about Bill Ellis or contact him, please visit his website, www.brandingpillars.com. See you next time.